concerned with here. Let's see if we can go over to our debris detection tool just to see if we're seeing anything with that. I'm going to pause it right here, in the area of concern that we would be concerned with is this area right here, but I'm not really seeing a drop off there. We're seeing sort of a different color, and what we're looking for is we've got these areas of maroon, and what we're looking for is kind of a shade of blue or a shade of green, indicating that some objects there are not like the others. And what this color right here would represent, this orange shaded area, that's indicating that there's something that's likely not raindrops in that area, but it doesn't appear to be anything more than, I would probably say, perhaps some hail that's occurring there. What we would be concerned with is we're seeing a blue color like this area right here, or again, something that's a little bit more green. So that's good news right now, but still, if we go over to our rotation tracker here, you can clearly see a defined area with winds going this way away from the radar and winds going towards the radar on this side of the storm right here. And it looks like we're getting a little bit new of a scan here that looks like it's moving right along or just north of M46. And Matthew, do you have your mic on just yet? If we're
yes, my mic is on. Yeah, I can hear
okay,
myself
so
there.
feel free to contribute anything that you've seen with this storm here as we've gone probably throughout, again, the last 45 minutes or so. It's kind of been ever since this went into Tuscola County that it's really been a little bit more concerning.
Right, yeah, we were watching this and it kind of kept cycling in and out here, and finally it looks like it has gained that strength that warranted the tornado warning on it. But it's still been moving from west to east here, pretty much right along M46. Started off over towards the Gara area, just north of Frankenmuth. But yeah, making its way towards the Daytona Branch, East Dayton area, and over towards Kingston too, but continuing to make that eastward motion here. The rotation still looks fairly strong on it too, so that would at least indicate that the storm is possibly creating a tornado. It's something, again, that if you are in the direction of Daytona Branch, East Dayton, Kingston, even a little bit farther up the road, we'll say south of DeFord, between DeFord and Kingston, you want to be heading to cover right now the lowest and centermost part of the building that you have here. And I've been checking the NWS chat too, and we haven't heard anything else from them as of recent. Chris, is there anything else that you've noticed here in the last couple of minutes?
Yeah, sort of as you've been talking here, Matthew, I've flipped over to the wind velocity mode, and this is sort of where we get a sense of the wind speeds within that storm. And I was getting a sample. Looks like where you're starting to see some of these brighter shades of red, almost pink, and even getting into a pinkish orange type color. It looks like it has gone away with the last scan, but certainly some winds that are being detected by the radar that are a little bit stronger than our usual severe strength. The last one I just sampled was about, I would say, 64 miles per hour, but there was one that was around 72 miles per hour in this storm too. So this area right here where you're starting to see these brighter shades of red and brighter shades of pink starting to pop up, even if there's not a tornado there, there is likely a really good pop of wind as that storm moves off to the east. And does look like, at least in my opinion, Matthew, that maybe as this has gone through the last couple of scans here, the rotation not looking quite as tight as maybe it did a few scans ago, but it's still close enough to where this warning seems at least justified.
Chris, I'd say so, and also with the history of this storm, again, over the last 30 minutes plus now, we've seen it doing this where it looks like it's kind of weakening, but then it starts to re-intensify or tighten back up again. Certainly, I do think it is still possible that the storm does have a tornado, or at least a funnel associated with that. So, Chris, totally think that this storm is still something that we'll need to continue to watch here for the time being. It looks like, did we just get an update from the National Weather Service? It looks like they have trimmed back their tornado warning just a little bit up into the Caro area. So now Caro is now not included. Locations along and north of M81 are not included in this tornado warning anymore. But the warning itself still does have an expiration time of 3 p.m. today. So that is still over a half of an hour out from now. Certainly, again, with the storm that has been cycling, I think it is possible that we could still see the storm at least holding some strength. Chris, I'd say at least for the next 10 or 15 minutes here.
Yeah, and that warning, I think, as you mentioned, goes until 3 o'clock this afternoon. And I was talking about this a little bit before you ended up getting your microphone on there as you were getting set behind the scenes, is one of the things that would be, if a tornado were to occur with this storm today, is the fact that we are seeing torrential rainfall, as some of these storms that have come through today have just been pouring, and they haven't been pouring for 10 or 15 minutes. They've been pouring for a half hour to 45 minutes. And if there is a tornado within this storm, which again, we are not saying that there has been one confirmed, we have not seen any reports of that. This is purely radar indicated rotation at this time. But if there were to be a tornado in there, it would be incredibly tough to see. And we know that everyone in the Midwest likes to really get a good picture, if they can, of storms as they come through. But this is a situation today where that is really not advised. We don't advise it in any situation, but today that would be even more important, because if there is a circulation in that, it's going to be very tough for you to actually see. And if you're sort of in that danger zone, then all sorts of problems can occur in this situation compared to a usual situation. So I'm going to slow this down. Once again, this is our rotation tracker tool, the traditional area where we look for reds and greens side by side, indicating any sort of rotation with the winds. It would likely be in this area right here, just to the west of East Dayton. It looks like just to the north of M46 in that area. And again, we are talking about Tuscola County. This is just to the west of Kingston. So if you are in the Kingston area, I would certainly be getting to your safe place just to be on the safe side. As Matthew mentioned just a few moments ago, if you are in the Caro area, you are not in the area of concern with this storm as it moves off to that east-northeasterly direction. If you're in Kingston, as I mentioned, I would definitely be taking precautions and get to your safe place just to be on the safe side. DeFord, you are probably, I would say, sort of on the north side of this storm. It might just go just to your south, but I would still be preparing just in case you're still included in that polygon. And then anywhere on the western side of Tuscola County, this is going right towards that, Sanilac County, going from Tuscola into Sanilac County. Those areas should be on alert as well. And although I will say that it looks like we're losing a bit of that tight circulation here, Matthew, just based on the history of this storm as it's gone throughout the last hour, and as you mentioned, how it's been cycling and those types of things, I wouldn't let one little diminishing trend here fool you into thinking that you shouldn't be taking precautions right now.
Totally, Chris. And I've been looking at another tool here, the spectrum width. It actually has still a decent signal on that. If you're able to pull up the spectrum width map there, just to the west of the East Dayton area, there has been a decent signal of usually this would indicate a funnel or at least an even tighter rotation within the storm. So this does work with that rotation tracker. So that would likely be the best area where there is, if there is a tornado with the storm, where it would be right now. So just over to the west of East Dayton, and again, right by M46 and M24 where they intersect with each other.
Yeah, so I would say probably a simple way to describe this tool right here. Matthew said it's called spectrum width to be technical, but what this kind of does is, I want to say, assesses the chaos within the storm,
right,
and kind of where that chaotic changing of the winds is certainly happening. And as Matthew mentioned, the area that we would be watching there is kind of that region right to the west of East Dayton, sort of running right along M46 there. So the last update that we've gotten in our National Weather Service chat room here just continues to confirm that right now this is radar indicated rotation. We will flip over and see if we can find any hints as far as debris is concerned. Matthew, I'm pulling this one back up, and between that East Dayton and Daytona Branch area, that's tough to say. It's certainly not a classic CC signature. I would probably lean a little bit more towards hail, perhaps, or something like that in that storm, not necessarily debris with that shade.
And these storms have had a little bit of a history of at least having some small hail within them too. So that does look more like a hail signature to me, but still something that we are going to continue to watch here with this storm as it is moving right through.
Yeah, and if you're just joining us, I talked about this a little bit earlier on. The colors that we would be looking for, and for instance, the colors that we ended up finding with the Lake Fenton tornado a little while back was something that's a little bit closer to that bright shade of green, or as you start getting into those blue shaded areas. If we start to see almost a circular type formation that happens there, that's when we'd be more concerned. But right now, not seeing anything with our debris tracking tool that really makes it stand out to say that is for sure any debris there. So we'll see what happens as that storm continues moving off to the easterly direction. Right now, This, to me, looks a little bit more like a wind threat, primarily on the front of this. Right here, there's still enough green in that area where this tornado warning is still justified, but it's starting to look like it's bowing out a little bit, almost.
A little bit there, a little bit, but still, that would be stronger winds within that kind of pink shading there too, right near East Dayton. So like you mentioned earlier too, even if there isn't exactly a funnel right there, certainly that is going to be a good pop of wind associated with that.
Let's get a good look at the winds in this storm. This is right around, looks like South Herds Corner Road. That's where the strongest winds appear to be headed towards South Plain Road. We'll get a sample right in this center area here. And looks like it's picking up on the warning, so let me just turn that off really quick. This will give us a really good idea of what some of the winds are. It looks like right now that's not picking up on a ton. That says 13 miles per hour. I don't know if I believe that. See if we can get a better idea. That's also saying 13 miles per hour. So let's see what we can sample with another area.
I will say typically when we see these colors, there are usually wind speeds at least 50 to 60 miles per hour.
Yeah, so for whatever reason, that's not doing a great job of picking up what would probably be the more realistic wind speed there. But again, if you're in the East Dayton area or just to the east of the East Dayton area, right to the south of Rossman Road, and hopefully I'm pronouncing this one correctly, Frade Road. Perhaps at that O and E.
It looks like Frade Road.
Yeah, Frade Road. If you're in that area, or this one's a little bit easier, just to the south of Rossman Road and Shaw Road. So apologies if you live along how we're pronouncing that, Frade Road, and we pronounced that incorrectly. But that would be the area where we're seeing the strongest wind right now. The tornado warning is still currently in effect, but not seeing a really tight circulation signature at this point. Let's see if we can get that warning base box back up to sort of show you where that is. So again, if you're in the Kingston area, we'll zoom in here and see if we can find any other communities. Kingston, DeFord, you'll be on the north side of this, so probably the worst of it just skimming by to your south. Hammonds, that area on the western side of Tuscola County, probably an area that should pay attention as well. And Kingston, regardless of whether this storm tightens back up and produces a really strong circulation, be prepared for some stronger winds to move in.
And I'd say, especially if you're right along M46 there in eastern Tuscola County and about 2 or 3 miles north or south of M46, it's like Chris just mentioned, down towards the Coylton area, Kingston, and also just north of Kingston too. So between Kingston and DeFord, I know that area is a little more sparse. Chris, if you put a cone on there,
yeah, that's what I'm going to do right here. So it looks like this is moving about 25 miles per hour off to the east. And now that we're getting this little structure, almost like a big curve out in front of this, we'll see if we can get that to go out a little bit farther. Let me just adjust this to 25 miles per hour. We'll do a nice curve right along the leading edge here, and we'll go pretty much just to the west of or that western side of Tuscola County here. And so we've got Kingston here within the next couple of minutes. So you might even be feeling some of the stronger winds at least starting to move in at that point. Hammonds, that one looks like around 2:49. So you've got about 15 minutes. Did we just get another update?
Looks like that was a flood warning that was just issued.
So the National Weather Service, we were talking about this outside of the wind threat. Just some torrential rain being produced. So the National Weather Service in Detroit has now issued an aerial flood advisory. So that is for the Tuscola County area. That goes until 5:30 this afternoon. Between 2 and 3 inches of rain appears to have fallen within this storm. And before I got into the office today, some torrential rain occurring on the west side of Saginaw. With some of these storms that had passed through here as well. So Matthew, if there's any sort of good news with this storm, at least for the moment, it really looks like the wind is starting to take over with that latest velocity scan here.
I'd say so. Even the rotation looks like it has still been weakening a little bit. And with the history of the storm where we saw it cycling, where we'd see a few radar scans, it would tighten back up and then weaken once again. I will say, Chris, the good news here is it looks like the last handful of scans have actually continued slightly more of that weakening trend on this.
Yeah, so we're going to continue as long as this warning is in effect, as we typically do. And this is going to go until 3 o'clock unless the National Weather Service decides to cancel this early. But just because this isn't completely concerning as far as a tornado threat right now. We can go ahead and back up just a little bit to sort of show you the life cycle of this tornado warned storm as it's gone through. We can go back nearly an hour or so, and we'll just give this a wider view. And if we play this through, you can really see just how it's kind of cycled through itself, and now how it's broadening out a little bit, maybe even going back 2 hours now. Because you messaged me about this one probably around, I would say 1:30 near the Bridgeport area. It was looking a bit concerning, but then it lost it almost as soon as we started talking about it. And then it's just continued to cycle a little bit from there.
Exactly, and there was never exactly at least a sign early on, but when it really started to weaken or strengthen back up once again, it really started to have our attention a little bit.
Yeah, and not to live in the past here, but this is also helpful. If anyone was around the just to the northeast of the Vassar area, that was where we started to get a little bit concerned as well, that it was picking back up again. And if you were around perhaps the Gara area, just to the north of Frankenmuth, got a little bit tighter in that region too. That one looks a little bit more broad than it was kind of right around that Vassar area. Vassar was kind of the area where we started to think we might have to get in the studio very soon. And of course, everything seems to be confirmed not long after that, where we got that report of the tornado warning coming in. So that continues again until 3 o'clock this afternoon. The National Weather Service just gave us another update. That one is a continuation of the tornado warning for Tuscola County. Severe thunderstorm capable of producing a tornado was located over Kingston, or 8 miles northeast of the Mayville area, moving around 25 miles per hour. So these storms aren't moving very quickly either, and that makes the flood advisory, makes a lot of sense with that.
Absolutely, and again, like you mentioned, if you're near Kingston, right along M46, all the way over to the county line between Tuscola County and Sanilac County, you still want to play it safe with this. Make sure you're heading indoors and certainly taking shelter too. Try to get into the basement if you have a basement. If you don't, try to get into the centermost location of your house. Try to put as many walls still between you and the exterior of your house too.
Yeah, so it's looking like some of the stronger winds are going right into the Kingston area right now, right along that Rossman Road area, Phillips Road, one of the cross streets there, Ross Street, Noble Street. Cemetery Road, not quite to you just yet. It looks like the winds have picked up, but you're not getting the core of it just yet. And we'll zoom in on Kingston just a little bit more. So River Street, Washington Street, Pine Street, any of those areas looks like right in that centermost part of Kingston. If it's not windy already, probably will start picking up here very soon.
Right, and this storm does have a history of these stronger winds too. Now looking at the consumer's outage map, there's a small outage being reported right between Gara and Frankenmuth. It does look like folks who are just a little bit farther east of there too. Thumb Electric is reporting a few power outages too. So that would indicate that these winds are still pretty strong, and I would say wind speeds at least exceeding 50 to 60 miles per hour. So just another reason to get indoors and take shelter as this storm moves through right now. Again, if you're near Kingston, you're the area especially that's right towards the middle of this storm path at the moment.
This looks like, just based on some of the streets that we're at now, this is running right along that M46 area. And just looking at some of the strongest winds might be right over where the school library is, and right near the football field, it appears, just to the west of Ross Street.
It looks like we just got a new scan in there too that's moved that just slightly to the northwest,
so
or northeast of town.
Appears right over the heart of Kingston right there. And let me see if I could zoom in just a little bit more. And again, I want to stress that this is primarily a wind threat from everything that we've seen on radar. There is a tornado warning in effect, but we have not seen any sort of confirmation that there is a tornado on the ground. Matthew and I have noticed a lot of the rotation hasn't been nearly as strong as it was. Up towards Rossman Road, Barrett Road, Leg Road, it is likely getting a little bit more gusty there with some of the winds, some of the stronger winds, right over almost that intersection of Rossman and Cemetery Road, going up to about the Leg Road area. So if we can get a sense of where that is as we play that.
Chris, I'm trying to dial up a few wind speeds here too, just on our other computer over here. Still looking like there are some strong winds that could be just north of that Kingston area too, and again right through the town itself. So again, these winds are strong enough to pose at least this severe weather threat. And again, the tornado warning still in effect on the storm until 3 p.m. this afternoon. So we still have another 20 minutes on the tornado warning itself. But even if there isn't exactly a funnel associated with the storm, it does look like we at least have stronger winds with it. Chris, if you pull up the wind velocity map, just the straight wind velocity map.
We're on that right now.
Getting a speed query of around 70 miles per hour on that.
Okay, so that fits in pretty much with how we've been feeling about this. Let me see if I can, again, turn that warning base off, and you're absolutely right. So for whatever reason, just a few minutes ago when we were talking, it was coming up 13 miles per hour, but we were assuming just based on the color that it was probably closer to the upper 60s and low 70s, and it appears that's the case. So again, this is by the intersection of Cemetery and Rossman going up towards the Barrett Road area, and that looks like mostly just a very crop-based area, which is good. Hopefully, if anything were to occur with that, it would just be in a wide open field. But with the last couple of velocity scans that we've seen, it seems like the tornado threat here is becoming less and less, and this has shifted to a little bit more of a wind threat. And that last update that we got from the National Weather Service, that was at 2:39. They did issue a special weather statement, it looks like, for western Sanilac County through 3:15, and I'm almost wondering if that is a signal that we are going to see that tornado warning allowed to expire or canceled early, I think.
Chris, I would think so. I'm reading that special weather statement, and they don't have any mention of a tornado within the special weather statement. Still reporting at least wind gusts up to around 40 miles per hour with this, and some smaller hail too. I would say we should give it just a few minutes here just to see what the National Weather Service decides to do here with this warning.
Yep, and we've said it before as we've been on the air here, just based on the history of these storms as we've gone throughout today. They have shown signs of life, then they've gone back down, they've come back up. It's been doing that, I think, going back now for about an hour and a half, back when this was near I-75. So let's see if we can just get a little bit of a debris tracker scan here. Still not seeing anything that would suggest debris. To me, probably some hail that's occurring. Maybe at the worst, perhaps some small branches or things like that. Leaves, perhaps, that might be getting tossed up in there, but nothing that would suggest a tornado's on the ground, at least not what I'm seeing.
Exactly. No, there's nothing too eye-popping with that debris tracker scan, but that does look a lot like a hail signature too.
Yeah, and we're sort of right on the edge of that Sanilac County area. So this storm, the worst of it, and let's just circle back here for some of our communities that are still considered to be under the tornado warning. Mayville, you are not in any danger. If for whatever reason you are in your safe place, you are all clear. DeFord, you're close by, but it appears the worst of this storm is just to your south and east. I would still pay attention, but I would say DeFord is out of the area that would be too concerning. Caro, you've been out of that for a long time now. M53, I would say if you're north of M46 going along M53 here, towards that Haymans area. And again, I really hope that I'm pronouncing that town correctly. I apologize if I'm not. Right along East Bevins Road appears to be where that really strong wind core is. And Matthew and I have been sampling that every once in a while, and it has been indicating winds that are a little bit higher than our usual severe thunderstorm standard, which is 58 miles per hour. Oftentimes we see severe thunderstorm warnings around 60 miles per hour. Today we're bumping that up, at least in this particular storm, by about 10 miles per hour. We are very close to that western Sanilac County line, where the strongest of that storm is. And this is between DeFord and Kingston. We'll circle back here to the Bevins Road area. I'm going to see sort of what's in that area.
Right, and Chris, also while you're checking there, I'm taking a look at our spectrum width again. which spectrum width is just a map that we use that works with our rotation tracker just to see where we have a lot of wind changing speed within that storm. And I'm not seeing anything really indicating, or at least anything eye-popping, that that there may still be a funnel associated with this storm.
Okay, so this is going to play out exactly what we were just talking about a few moments ago. So instead of opting to continue the tornado warning, the National Weather Service in Detroit is going to keep a severe thunderstorm warning into Sanilac County. And I think some good news here, Matthew, is we've mentioned it before in previous tornado warnings that we've had so far this severe weather season is within the last couple of years, there has been a new way of doing some of our severe thunderstorm warnings where they're at the bottom. If you read all the text, it has what is called a tornado possible tag to it. And what that essentially means, in its most simplest terms, is a storm is showing signs of rotation, but it's not quite gotten to that point where we feel comfortable issuing a tornado warning just yet. And the fact that the National Weather Service is not even including the tornado possible tag here makes me think that they're sort of sharing the same thoughts and seeing the same thing that we are, that this has lost some of its rotation characteristics and has shifted more to that just wind threat, and a pretty significant wind threat. We don't want to diminish that.
Right.
70 miles per hour will certainly cause some damage as it's gone through, and we have had some history of producing a little bit of hail today, and just torrential downpours as well, and not downpours that are lasting 5 or 10 minutes. These downpours are lasting 30, 45 minutes. And these storms, while moving at a decent pace, 25 to 30 miles per hour, they are not sprinting through the area either.
Right, and you mentioned with the rain, you aren't going to really be able to see anything out of these storms, so it is best to take shelter out of this. And even with that wind threat that we still have on the front side of the storm, locations downwind of that, places like Hemans, like we were mentioning, also Lamont, and also I'd say even towards Moore, once you get even a little bit farther into the east, into Sanilac County near M19. Still may be a good idea to at least head inside, take shelter, just with the storm still moving in that direction and at least showing a stronger wind threat with that too.
Yeah, and I'm just going to back this up just to confirm some of our own thinking as well. When we've been looking at the debris tracker, we've had a suspicion of some hail. This isn't lining up in those spots that we were expecting hail exactly, but we are seeing some signs in we call it the reflectivity, where we assess the intensity of the rainfall. We are seeing some shades of purple every now and again, which would indicate there has been some hail being produced with this storm, but it does appear that even that is starting to wind down a little bit, at least in the latest scans. So the Weather Service is going to continue a severe thunderstorm warning into Sanilac County, and that goes until 4 o'clock. So that one's going to be an extended period of time as well. And that goes back to the point of these are not moving very quickly. So if you're along the M46 area going into Sanilac County, right around the M19, the southern sections of M19, still a lot of wind being produced with this storm. The strongest wind now looks like it's going right over the M53 area, starting to move into that Lamont area. It's had a history of at least detecting 70 miles per hour winds. Just knowing that the radar beam goes up with height away from the National Weather Service office in Detroit, by the time it does get to these portions of Tuscola and Sanilac County, it is a bit more elevated. So it may not exactly be 70 miles per hour right to the T at ground level, but the potential is there, and sometimes even if that wind is elevated, these storms can bring that right down to the surface. So it's still worth paying attention to. We have not had a cancellation of that tornado warning just yet, but again, if you're in places like Mayville, Caro, DeFord, even the Kingston area now, you are now past the worst of this. The worst of that wind threat has now passed you by. And it looks like, Matthew, this storm that they just issued the severe thunderstorm warning for has picked up the pace a little bit, up to about 35 miles per hour. So we'll see if we can get a new track on this just into western Sanilac County, where some of these these stronger winds.
Correct, and I was just checking our velocity map too there, and it does look like, at least on that last scan, that it is maybe weakening, those wind speeds slowing down just a little bit, but still, certainly with those colors, that's indicating wind speeds at least 60 miles per hour. And Chris, like you mentioned too, with the storm starting to speed up, it is still going to bring some windy conditions down to the ground as well.
Yeah, so if you're in the Moore area, this will be starting to push in. You'll probably notice things getting gusty closer to around 255, 256. So within the next 5 or 6 minutes, Sandusky, you do have a little bit of time here. You're closer to about 3 o'clock, 3:05, somewhere in that area. Just want to stress again that we're coming up on about 10 minutes here until the warning with that tornado warning is about to expire here. Haven't gotten any confirmation of a tornado actually being on the ground. If you do have damage reports, Matthew and I have said this a couple of times, just with the torrential amount of rain that has been produced with these storms, anything, if it did briefly touch down, is going to be very hard to see. But 70-mile-per-hour winds, if those manage to come down to the surface, those are certainly nothing to scoff at either. So if you have damage reports with that, we would like to have those. You can post them to our Facebook page, WNEM TV5 News. You can just post that to the wall. Kind of surprised that we're not seeing this warning being canceled just yet. Maybe they're just because we're so close, if they're just going to allow that to expire on its own.
I am checking here. Still haven't seen anything yet in the NWS chat indicating that the tornado warning has been canceled yet.
But definitely, let's see if we can go back even just the last 15 minutes. It looks like it's starting to lose its steam with the wind as well, as you were mentioning just a few moments ago.
Right.
Some of those brighter shades of pink, almost getting into that yellowish pink, peach type shade, look like they're starting to go away.
And Chris, still not seeing too much on our spectrum with map either, at least nothing too notable to point out. And I do agree, I do think that this is starting to turn more into a straight line wind threat. But again, if you are near that Lamont area, also towards Moore and Sandusky, you'll still want to at least head inside and take some shelter just with the stronger wind out of the storm, because it still would be able to pick up loose objects around the house or around the yard with wind speeds that are still being indicated at over around 60 miles per hour.
Yeah, so let's just go back now that the storm has at least relaxed from the tornado threat just for a moment. Just to the west of Tuscola County, we're seeing some new cells fired through Saginaw County and what looks like the northwestern side of Genesee County here very shortly. They did issue that flood advisory for the Tuscola County area. And let's see if we can get just some radar estimated rainfall totals, perhaps just over the last couple of hours here, to get a sense of maybe how much rain has fallen with some of these storms. Looks like things really took off right around that Saginaw County area, just to the south of Bay County and Midland County. And I experienced this. We've mentioned it a couple of times. These downpours have had some staying power. I did see some flooded streets, nothing extreme, but certainly saw some drains that might have been backed up in Saginaw Township on my way in.
Right, and that moved right over the station here too. It was very loud at the station, just a lot of rain coming down. And I was checking the cameras at my house. I had standing water in my driveway too. So there certainly is going to be some standing water on a pavement, on some roadways around the area, especially if you're still over into the central thumb near M46 and M19, like we were mentioning, where that storm is starting to move into western Sanilac County. Still just the heavy rain out of the storm should pose just a brief ponding effect on some of the roadways around there too.
Yeah, so these are estimated rainfall totals. Keep in mind, there is always a little bit of skepticism with these as they come in. It is run through a computer program. They do a pretty good job, but as always, it's not going to be exact. But these seem, based on that flood advisory and just some of the downpours that we have seen, these seem fairly realistic, and I wouldn't doubt them at this point. 2.5 inches right around that Midland Road and State Street in Saginaw Township, along M47 there as you start to go to Freeland, around 2.5 inches there. Just to the northeast of Vassar, Also getting rainfall totals sampled around 2.5 inches. That storm, as it was moving just to the northeast of Bridgeport, around 2 inches of rainfall. So definitely expecting some flooded streets here for at least a little while. But thankfully, really starting to see that.
Chris, it looks like NWS has just expired the tornado warning.
Okay, so about 5 minutes early here, which is great news. So now I'm also looking at our latest rotation tracker here, just continuing the trend of what we've seen for probably the last 15 or 20 minutes now. We are starting to see even that wind threat die down. So I'm feeling pretty comfortable returning everyone to their regularly scheduled programming here. But before we do, just a quick wrap up here. We'll handle this severe thunderstorm warning one more time for Sanilac County before we do go off the air. This one continues until 4 o'clock this afternoon. The hazards with that are primarily hail and primarily winds up to 60 miles per hour. We were getting a good sample of winds that were near 70 miles per hour in the Tuscola County area, but that seems to be losing its steam very quickly, I might add. It seems like as soon as that has crossed the western Sanilac County line there, right along M53, it's really started to die down. So maybe those winds a little bit closer to about 50 to 55 miles per hour now, and appears to be trending downward.
Right.
So that would be great news. But as always, we will be in the station from this point forward. I would say the best severe weather threat is probably just going to hang on a little bit longer here, at least in these areas that it has passed through thus far. I would imagine these storms have probably stolen a lot of the juice that was available for any severe weather threat today. And a lot of what looks like it's developing to the west of there isn't even close to severe. It looks like we're hardly even seeing any lightning out of those. So on the plus side, beneficial rain for many communities today, sort of along that straight line along M46 and just north of there. But we will get you back to your regularly scheduled programming for now. Again, that tornado warning that was in effect for Tuscola County has now expired. A severe thunderstorm warning moving through Sanilac County, but we're starting to see signs that that storm might be weakening a little bit as well. Still take it seriously as long as that warning is in effect. If we have to pop back on at any point during the afternoon, we will do so. But until then, have a good afternoon, and we'll get you back to your regularly scheduled show.